When we what should we go to next? If we want
Small
to talk
talk.
about bad stuff, why don't we talk a little bit about maybe Vengeance? Apparently, Vengeance is the second worst selling pay-per-view in WWE history, second only behind December to Dismember. Apparently, it did 130,000 buys, which is like TNA numbers.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
that's
Yeah,
piss
that's
poor
not even
planning
TNA
on.
numbers. That's Ring of Honor numbers.
Yeah, that's piss poor planning on WWE's part. Have Hell in a Cell and Vengeance that close.
yeah, there was really no point in it. I
Yeah.
mean, I can understand that you want to add another pay-per-view to get more revenue, but the 130,000 buys, obviously, unless their expenses break that margin, it gives them 50 more bucks for each one of those, and then all the ticket sales and all that kind of stuff. But what's uh what's funny about this to me is this was headlined by some pretty decent matches. I mean, we had Cena in the main event. We had Punk with Triple H, who Triple H hadn't wrestled in a while, against who was it they were against? Is it
Awesome
Truth?
Truth.
Yeah, right. So they had that. They had the Mark Henry Big Show match, which I'm sure Mark Henry Big Show isn't going to be like the top seller or anything like that, but still it was something that we hadn't really seen in a while or anything.
That was the ring collapse one too, right?
I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it was ring collapse, then it went into
Yeah.
disqualification. Now they're going into god awful territory.
Yeah, so if this did such a poor buy, I mean, what was up with that?
I don't know. I
It's
bought
because
it.
it was in 2 weeks. That's all it was. They shifted the pay-per-view. It was like 2 weeks from the last pay-per-view. Then came Vengeance. Of course, it's going to do an awful buy. You
Yeah.
can't expect
But
the
then
pay-per-view
what
to
about the
do
other
awesome.
pay-per-views in the past that were in the same kind of boat? They didn't do as bad.
Yeah, but people have got short attention spans, and you can't put together a feud within a 2 week span. It's not going to work. And most of
Yeah.
these pay-per-views that were happening, previously, you already had matches going on from the previous pay-per-view, so they had ongoing storylines.
Yeah, it's an additional $100 to your cable bill if you got both.
Yeah.
A month. For pretty much the same storyline just being shown on 2 Sunday nights instead of combined into one.
Well, how
You know, I
pissed
can
do you think
easily-
that they are that they spent all this time? They got rid of bragging rights, which I loved. I never thought it would made any sense being right in
That
front
was an
of
awesome
Survivor
pay-per-view.
Series. I always thought it would have been better right after around WrestleMania, but they get rid of that, and then they want to call it Uprising, I think it was. And then they decide that they can't call it that because of like a UFC pay-per-view or something like that. So they give it some other U name. I don't remember the name of it. And then they decide that they don't want to do that, so they just go back to the same old Vengeance, which Vengeance has been like 4 different types of pay-per-views by now.
Mm-hmm.
And then it bombs. It's like they tried everything that they could to switch this around, and it basically tanked as bad as it possibly could.
You know, the best way, and I've always said this, I'm a big advocate for this, is if they've just placed all the minor pay-per-views on the WWE network. Have the major ones like SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and WrestleMania, all those, on pay-per-view, and have the rest of them on the WWE network. At least you're getting an extra $10 per household. You're guaranteeing that this channel is going to sell for the pay-per-views alone.
But you have to also release them for pay-per-view in case people don't want to buy the network.
But at the end of the day, that's
true.
It's more of that. That's more of an anomaly, isn't it? Because you're going to get the extra pay-per-view buys for those who ain't going to buy the network. And if you're a cheapskate like me, you're going to sit there and think, pay the extra $10 for a network or pay $100 for 2 pay-per-views. I'm going to go with the network.
Right. Yeah. That's people are going to look at it as you give them both the options. I forget what it was called. I'm not a business major or anything like that, but there's that you give them the poor option so that the better option looks that much better. It's a simple tactic. I mean, if I were in a position that I was going to be doing that, I would definitely go for the network over everything else because $100 or $120 a year is a hell of a lot better deal than $100 for 2 pay-per-views.
There you go.
Right. So if they do that, I mean, hell, they could add a pay-per-view every 2 weeks for all I care.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, don't do that because I have to review this shit and I really don't want to.
Plus, with
But
that, you could boost the price a little bit. I think right now it's $45, and move it up to like maybe 55 for the big four, and kind of catch back some of that because everybody buys the big four. That's where your biggest sales are.
yeah, and at the end of the day, what happens between those big four, no matter how great the storylines are, people aren't going to buy it because we're in a recession.
Yeah.
No matter how much you slice it, at the moment, the America's in a huge uncertainty. You've still got the freaking lockouts going on. No one's going to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to buy an extra few bit of pay-per-views because of a 2-week storyline. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started on the whole recession thing with people charging more, even though they realize that people have less money to spend. I could make this whole 3-hour thing about that.
I'm pretty sure. I think I remember I'd bought the Vengeance pay-per-view, so I'm one of those suckers that bought into it. But I bought it for the only fact that it was Dolph Ziggler versus Zack Ryder.
You're one of the 1%.
I'm the 1% too. So all you
The
occupied
other two
bastards.
matches that he did, we did the tag title match.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the opening matches were better than free. Actually, it was a decent pay-per-view. I remember walking away with like, yeah, this is. The matches were okay. The promos, of course, by R-Truth were amazing. But it was a decent pay-per-view. It was just piss poor planning on WWE's part. Can't do a pay-per-view 2 weeks apart.
No, but
Should be like a Saturday night's main event or something.
It goes back to the lazy booking thing that I was talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
They have this thing where they try to milk something as much as they can, and it gets to the point where they just leave it. Like the whole thing with Survivor Series. They literally just let The Rock be the whole selling point of this pay-per-view, and it's not going to work. They're not a marketing and branding company. They're a wrestling company. If Vince actually gets out into his stupid head, maybe things will get better. They're a wrestling company. They need to sell their product, which is wrestling. They need to cater their product to their fans who are paying for the wrestling and not turn them away. And by doing
You mean
what
they're a
doing
sports
at the moment,
entertainment product?
oh, bullshit. Tony, don't make me go over there and punch you. It's a wrestling company. This is what they do.
Did any of you guys? I posted a link on my Facebook, and I think for anybody out there, they should definitely take a look at it. Piper did an interview with Score in Canada right after he did the Raw, and he made a very valid point. I know this is kind of straying away from the buy rate, but he said the difference between wrestlers today and back in the 80s, and even I would say the Attitude Era, is that wrestlers think too much. They go out there and they're trying to do the precise moves, and then when they mess up,
motivation?
Yeah, they don't wrestle with their heart. And he said it perfect. He said, like, when you wrestle with your heart and you make a mistake, you slipped, but you kept going and it got better. Now they're thinking, and when they mess up, it's like the whole match. Now they're thinking, oh my God, I made a mistake, and that's what they harp on. And then to further back that point, I was reading an article where Ziggler was commenting on his match with Punk, and he said he lost sleep because he thought it was a horrible match. But in the end, I think the Ziggler-Punk match was really good.
Yeah, but then everybody's their own harshest critic. I mean,
yeah. But I think Piper hit the nail on the head, which is most wrestlers these days wrestle with their brain, not their heart, show up for a paycheck, which in turn affects the product, and you get shitty buy rates like December to Dismember or whatever the hell it was called.
Well, before we start getting into even more complicated stuff, if you're not a big fan of Mark Henry's face on your screen, I apologize ahead of time because the next thing is more Mark Henry talk. They're thinking babyface turn. I know it doesn't make much sense to me either, but we're going to discuss it. Stay tuned.